welcome back to Two Camping Gurus. Now I had a viewer of mine comment saying I should show how I made this. It's pretty straightforward, but I will give a quick tutorial on how I put this together.
Welcome to Two Camping Gurus. If you like camping in the great outdoors, you are in the right place. Stick around to the end of this video so we can show you how you can get your free ebook and pre-trip checklist to make sure you and your rig are ready for the road. Now, let's get into today's content.
Now again, as I said in the other video, if you watched it, it's going to be different for every vehicle because sometimes the axles are different space, different size tires and things like that. So to find out the size that you need for yours, what I did was I took just a standard board about the same thickness as this for the most part, put it where I wanted it on the tire, and then I went behind here with a marker and just drew. I held the marker right along the tire here and I just drew a line on both sides, and then I did the same thing for the bottom where I wanted to place the smaller one. That gave me the rough angle I needed and the length of it to land roughly where I wanted it. So we'll swing into the shop and I'll just give you a brief tutorial on how I put it together, how I cut it, and all those parts of the build. And as far as the bolt that goes down to it, it's just a threaded rod, and it's gonna, again, you'll have to, once you get the two pieces cut and set them in place without this threaded rod, you can set it here, you know, let's pretend the rod's not here. You set these in place, then you can measure how long you need a rod to make sure it'll go through both of them and, you know, stick out enough to put on a nut to tighten it down. So that's how I determine the length of the rod. Now as far as the rod itself, you can go to your most hardware stores or your big box building stores will have threaded rod like this, and this here is 1/2 inch threaded rod, so it's a pretty good size. Probably could go with a smaller one. That's something I had laying around, so that's up to you. I did put a washer on top and bottom, and I have a lock washer on this one. This one here I don't usually turn at all. It just stays stationary, and I turn the top one just to pull it down tight. So when I had those measurements, I just went into the shop, took my 4x4 and cut the pieces the way I needed it. So let's swing into the shop real quick and I'll show you roughly what I did. So if you want to duplicate this process, you can. Basically what I did is I brought my board in that had the mark on it for the angle I needed to make it to cut off the end of the 4x4. Now this is just a scrap piece here, so I just used the table saw for that process, and all I did is I brought my blade up as high as it would go, of course. Now I gotta clean the sawdust out, so I won't bring it all the way up, but it go up a lot higher because you could be cutting through a thick piece of wood, and when you angle it, it's actually, you lose some of that blade. So in my case, I had to turn it over to cut through the rest of the way, and you might have to too. So after that, what I did is I brought the blade up and then I angled it to match the line on my board. Once I had that set, then all I had to do then was take the 4x4 I was going to use, and I used my cross-cut slide. I put it in place, and this actually has an angle on it here. I put it in place, cut off one end. It would be this way because the blade would be tipped like this. So I cut the one end off. Then I took my board that had my lines on it, held it up against the first line, and then I drew a little line up here on my 4x4 where the other cut had to be. And then I turned it around and I made that cut as well. And I just went through the saw like that. That gave me my two cuts that you see here. And then all I did was repeat that same process for the smaller one. And again, I had another board that I had the lines on, and I repeated that process. Now the angle on the bottom one was different because it was higher up in the tires, so it wasn't as far away from the opening. It was, you know, it was closer in, so that angle is different than the top. So you'll have to reset your saw based on the lines you made for the smaller block. Once that was done, you had your two blocks ready to go. All you have to do after that is drill the holes. And for that, I just took a tape measure across the top here, made a mark in the center, and then I went, you know, this way here, and I just made a mark in the center of both pieces. And I just took a drill gun. It doesn't have to be precise. You can use a drill press if you want. I chose not to in this case. I just took a drill gun with the appropriate size drill bit for the size threaded rod that I was going to use, and I drilled a hole through both of these one at a time. Then I was able to put them in place on the trailer, run the rod down through. Actually, I put the rod on first, and then I put them in place, and lo and behold, there you go. Now, it's a pretty simple build, but the key is you can't use any of my measurements. That's why I didn't give you any measurements, because every vehicle is different. Now, if you have the exact same trailer or somebody else, of course, that's going to be the same. But typically, you're probably not going to be the exact same width. And, you know, if you hold the board a little bit different, it's going to be a different length. But overall, if you want this setup, have your top board much higher up on the tire and your bottom board closer to that center. Now, I caution you not to go too close on the bottom one so that it has no tire left to bite and it actually just pulls through the center of the two tires. So that you want to be careful of that. Make sure you at least have the board low enough that there's enough tire, if this was the bottom, enough tire here that this can bite into and not just pull through, because that's not going to do you any good either. And really, that's all there is to it. The cost of this, now I had some scrap 4x4s here. It's actually not even 4x4, it looks like a 4x3. But again, you can use a scrap piece of wood. You don't need nothing fancy for this. Now you'll need, you know, a piece probably 4 feet long or so to do both sides. So you make sure you have plenty for that. But, you know, if you don't have that and you have 2x4s, you can screw two 2x4s together and then cut that angle, and you're still going to have a nice sized block to grab into that tire. Now, I think some people have actually made them with a 2x4, and I suppose you could. I wanted it, you know, a little bit thicker and have more surface to grab the tire. That's why I went with the larger block like this. But again, that's going to be your preference. So that's really all there is to it. I can't really there's really not much more to it than that. Hopefully this will explain it, and I appreciate the viewer comment and question to say, hey, how do you make that? I appreciate that. That was from Adam, one of my long-term viewers and dedicated viewer, and I certainly appreciate that. If anybody else has any questions or want to see something different, please put a comment down in the comment section, and I'd be happy to do the best I can. Anyway, for now, thanks for swinging by. Two Camping Gurus. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.